Great. So welcome back, everybody. My name's Arthasiddhi, in case we've not met as yet. I think there might be just Eileen to join us, but I think other than that, I think we're all here. So we'll start. So yeah, as Bodhicharia said, this is the start of a new series for the new year, this series we've called 5 Steps to Living Out Your Values. You could actually call it the Path to Awakening, How to Make It Happen. That's what we're kind of looking at. That's what these 5 steps are. But the whole series is based on a text, a very traditional text, a very central text called the Bodhicharia Vatara. Which means the guide to the path to enlightenment or awakening or wisdom. So that's what we're looking at. And it was composed really. It's a very poetic text, as we'll see, but it was composed by a Buddhist saint called Shantideva, he was born back in 685 and died in 763. So he lived a long time ago. He wrote this when he was at Nalanda. So Nalanda is this famous Buddhist university. I've been to it. It's the remains of it are still there. It's enormous. It's absolutely huge. So it emerges from a thriving time of Buddhism in India. Before the Muslim invasion sort of wiped out Buddhism in India. So that's the world that he comes from. And we don't know very much about his life of historical fact. There are hagiographies, and I'll tell you a little bit from at least one of them. I think it's a Tibetan version, but I think there's some commonality in the different hagiographies of his life. But in this hagiography, well, actually, there's a commonality in all of them, and that is that he sort of appeared to his fellow monks as quite an ordinary human being, even a bit of a joke, a bit of the butt of ridicule. But underneath, he was quite an extraordinary human being. Apparently, that's a bit of a motif in these ancient Indian hagiographies. So I don't know what we make of that. But the story goes that his fellow monks were trying to trip him up, trying to humiliate him. So they said, he was known for kind of lazing around and not really doing very much. They said to him, why don't you give us a talk? To which I can't remember whether he agreed or he had to do it, basically. And so they set up the date, and they were kind of sniggering and twittering because they thought that he'd sort of face plant, as it were. They stacked his chair up really, really high, so he couldn't even get on the chair. And somehow, by magical powers, apparently, he managed to lower the chair, sat on the chair, and then he said, "Would you like something old or new?" And they thought, "Great, let's make him do something new, because he'll make a complete fool of himself." And that's where he came out with this supposedly ad lib. So this is the text. It's really quite a long poem, supposedly ad lib. I find that hard to believe. And towards the end of it, he shot up into the sky. They could still hear the talk, him kind of giving the poetry, but he shot up into the sky. So that is, what do we make of that? I don't know. It sort of comes from a different world, doesn't it? But that's what we know of Shantideva. But as a text, it's a really important, really influential text. The Dalai Lama says it's his main source of inspiration. He reads it every day. It's the first text that Sangha, my teacher, the founder of our movement, did a seminar on when he started the order, the True Vata Buddhist order. And he said that we should all read and study it, and it's well worth doing. It's a very, very beautiful text is very, very long, but it's very, very beautiful. So a lot of the text is structured around what are called the 6 paramitars. And the 6 paramitars, you could talk about them as the practices that allow us to transcend ourselves. The practices that allow us to transcend ourselves. But we'll be coming to that in this series, kind of later on in this series. You won't hear anything about that tonight. But the early part of the text embodies a very practical list, what's called the object determining mental events. Sounds a bit technical, doesn't it? But you could call it sort of the objective determining kind of sequence of mental states, if you like. So what this is getting at is the kind of mental states, the sequence of mental states that you need to cultivate in order to achieve anything. That's what's being sort of described here in this teaching. So these are the 5 steps in the series title. So it's vinyatas in Sanskrit, if you're interested in the Sanskrit vinyata. So Subhuti, a leading teacher in our order, he says that basically the object determined mental events you need to go through to do anything. So to pass an exam, to rob a bank, to gain enlightenment, you need to go through this sequence of sort of mental states. So that's sort of fundamental, a very, very useful list to know. Now, of course, you won't have heard of them, but you have achieved things. So we do that unconsciously. We do that without being conscious of this sort of sequence. But we also know that not infrequently we fail to do things that we set out to do. And that is because we haven't been through this sequence. We haven't followed through these 5, this sequence of 5 mental events, mental states. So it's really, really helpful to make this conscious. If you can make it conscious, then we can learn how to do it. We can go, why did I fail there? Let's have a look at this. What can I do? So Buddhism is eminently practical, and that's what we're getting here. So the Bodhicarya part of the title is a guide to attaining the bodhicitta. The bodhicitta. Chitta means mind, and bodhi means enlightenment. So the mind of bodhi, the mind of awakening, the awakened heart. And because to achieve anything, we need to apply the vinyatas. The first chapter is the first vinyata, basically. Chanda, which can be translated as kind of strong desire or even fascination. That's where any undertaking starts, with a strong desire, kind of fascination. So what this is sort of illustrating is the fact that actually, if we truly want something, we're tremendously resourceful, aren't we? We're capable of all sorts of things if we kind of truly want it. If instead you're engaging with something on the basis of I should do this, it doesn't work very well, does it, very frequently? So if we kind of really, really want it, then you're going to get somewhere. That's where this starts. So what we need to do in order to make that a possibility is we need to imagine strongly how good it would be to have it, yeah, and even perhaps how bad it would be not having it, yeah, and we need to do that again and again to really let it sink in. So that's really what this first chapter is helping us do. It's helping us look at or kind of cultivate that strong desire to actually move towards enlightenment, to move along the path of awakening. And it does this by a series of powerful metaphors and analogies. That's the sort of the method, if you like, of this. So what I'm going to do is just read a few and sort of go into them a little bit, just draw them out, the significance of them. But I hope you've got a sense of kind of what's going on, that context of kind of Chanda. The title of this talk is Wanting It Badly. So that's what we need to do. Some things, that comes for free, doesn't it? Some things that we want come for free. What comes for free is wanting it badly. Well, enlightenment isn't like that. Actually, most things that are worth achieving aren't like that. We need to cultivate this first vinyata of cultivating a strong desire for our desired goal. So let's just have a look at some of the verses. So, are there any questions bubbling up at this stage, or should we dive in? No? Great. Okay. So here we are. Like the plantain stem, all other good things assuredly shed their fruit and then wither, whereas the awakening mind is a tree that constantly fruits. It does not wither, but continues to produce. I'll read that again. So plantain stem is a banana tree. Plantain stem sounds a bit more poetically kind of serious, doesn't it? Banana tree sounds like a bit of a joke, but like the plantain stem, all other good things assuredly shed their fruit and then wither, whereas the awakening mind is a tree that constantly fruits. It does not wither, but continues to produce. So it's what is that about? So we've got this contrast of good things that are like, so apparently a banana tree, it just produces one fruit and then the stem dies back. You have to cut it back. I didn't know this, I had to look it up on the internet. And then it produces another stem. You guys will perhaps know this. So that's what it's comparing good things to, that they kind of, emerge, they shed their fruit, and then they wither. So we've got this contrasted with a tree that constantly fruits. So the awakening mind is a tree that constantly fruits. What is all that about? How does that kind of strike you? It may not strike you at all, but I find it there's something quite beautiful, quite appealing about that image of a tree that constantly fruits. This sort of fecundity, this kind of constant freshness, constant newness, this sort of something kind of fertile with potential. I find that really quite appealing, actually. And it's been contrasted with good things, not bad things, good things. But these good things shed their fruit and then wither. So I don't know what that brings up in your mind, in your experience, but for me, actually, the first thing I started thinking about was music, actually. A bit of music that I was listening to, actually, quite a few times over the autumn, something that I got really, really fascinated with. It's a bit of classical music by a composer called Messiaen, a French composer. It's mad, it's really mad music. I didn't know what to make of it to start off with, but it really sort of, it was really important to me, actually. It has been really, it still is. It's sort of, when I was feeling a bit flat, it rejuvenated me, it refreshed me, just listening to that piece of music. I felt uplifted, rejuvenated, refreshed, to a surprising degree, actually. But what started to happen is it's not quite having the same effect as it was. I'm sure we've all had that experience, your favorite piece of music, and now it's just not quite doing it. It's tarnished. It's kind of, the fruit is starting to wither. Do you know that sort of area of life? So something that's very, very good, good things, significant that it's things, isn't it? When we rely on good things, they uplift us. They're fresh for a time, aren't they? And then they tarnish, they slump, they wither. Whereas the awakening mind has been contrasted with this as something that constantly fruits. So, yeah, what to draw out by this? So I suppose one thing that's very apparent for me is that when I get that experience, I resist it. I still don't believe that is going to happen, even though we all know that your favorite CD gets, if you keep playing it, it goes a bit boring. I don't actually, at some level, believe that. I want that not to be the case. There's some part of me for whom that is not enough. It's not enough. I want more. I'm not satisfied, actually, by good things that fruit and then wither. There's some part of me that you might call it naive, that wants more, that's kind of looking for more than can be found in good things like music, good things like a supportive partner, good things like a good job. There's some part of me that's looking for more than that. Sangha has put it as that we have an infinite capacity for disappointment. We keep looking for something that we don't quite know what it is in things that are not going to satisfy. So that's the territory we're in here. This tree that constantly fruits, what is it? What is this tree that constantly fruits? As I say, I find it really attracting. I want that. I want that in my life. I want my life to be day after day, kind of opening up in sort of fresh potentiality. That's what I want every day. I'm not satisfied when it's not there. When I feel flat, actually, I want that. That is something that I want. I really want. But do I want it badly enough? No, I don't. Actually, I need to work at wanting it. I need to work at wanting it. So it's interesting, isn't it? There are things that we do want badly, but in a way they're subtle, they get covered over. We lose touch with them as we go looking in the wrong places for them. So that's kind of what's being got at. So how do we work with this? Well, in a way, we just engage with our life, but we, as Kulapree was saying, develop mindfulness, look at your experience, reflect on your experience. So I was thinking about work. Work's a really good example. Job's a really good example of this. So I've always wanted to do the job that I'm doing, actually. Well, always. I didn't know what the job was when I was 3. For a long time, I've kind of wanted to do this job. 2 years in, there's a sense of, oh, is this it? As that kind of slump. So again, it's something good that's external to me. It's not enough, actually. It's not enough. Nothing external to us is going to be enough, because ultimately what we most desire is to grow. That's our deepest human desire. And that will never be achieved through things. We need instead a transcendent ideal that's constantly inviting us beyond ourselves every day. every moment. Now, external things like a job can do that for a while. Friend of mine was really benefiting from a particular job, and then he got promoted. The next job, he was getting more money, but it didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't do what previously his last job had. Even if he had stayed in it, like me, those external factors, they're not going to make growth happen. We need instead to have a kind of transcendent ideal. So the awakening mind is a transcendent ideal. That's what we're encountering. So I do a meditation practice every day, reflecting or meditating on an image of enlightenment. This image, in fact, it's a beautiful female form of the compassionate aspect of enlightenment, sort of fearless activity. That's what she sort of represents. And I've been doing that practice off and on for about 18 years, but it is fresher now than when I first did it. And that is because it's not merely an image. It's not merely an artistic, it's not merely a piece of music. It's a transcendent ideal that invites me beyond myself every time. If I actually see it, if I actually turn up to it, invites me beyond myself every day. And that is what we need actually to live this kind of constant, this constantly fruiting, fresh, full human life. That is what we need. So yeah, perhaps that evokes, starting to evoke this verse. But can you see how they're quite deep actually, these verses? I'll read it again. Like the plantain stem, all other good things assuredly shed their fruit and then wither. Whereas the awakening mind is a tree that constantly fruits. It does not wither, but continues to produce. Great. There was one other area that I was thinking about actually. I was thinking at a more collective level about this, particularly struck by this sort of good things actually distracting us from what most brings life growth, what really brings a flourishing in our life. That's really interesting, isn't it? I was thinking about the environment, a solution to the environmental crisis. That would be a good thing, wouldn't it? That would be a seriously good thing. But let's look at it quite kind of starkly. It would be a good thing. And what would happen after that came? There would be a glow, there would be a fruiting, and then there would be a withering. It would not be enough. It would not be enough. After that, there will still be inequality. There will still be poverty. There will still be prejudice. There will still be death, disease, the problem of meaning in human life. There will still be those things. Yeah. So it's just important that we see kind of what is important. Otherwise, the solutions we find to a massive problem like climate crisis will not actually address what truly satisfies us. And then there will be problems. It's only 50 years, is it, since nuclear disarmament was threatening to threatening the world. What will happen after, if there is an after climate? Anyway, good things assuredly shed their fruit and then wither. So let's really bring into focus, what is it that we really want? That's what this is kind of urging us to do. Another verse. Hoping to escape suffering, it is to suffering that they run. In the desire for happiness, out of delusion, they destroy their own happiness like an enemy. God, that's so true, isn't it? That is what is happening. That is what left to our own devices, we kind of do on this planet. That's how we've got to this climate crisis. I won't say more about that. Yeah, so here, another verse that's talking about the awakening mind in someone whom it's become dominant, it's arisen. That's the way it's sort of talked about. So it says, such a being, unprecedented, an excellent jewel, in whom there is born a concern for the welfare of others, such as others have not even for themselves. How is he born, or she born? Isn't that brilliant? Such a being, unprecedented, an excellent jewel, in whom there is born a concern for the welfare of others, such as others have not even for themselves. How is he born, or she born? So I don't know how that hits you. I don't know if that kind of reaches you. But it's this sort of area of, if we grow, we will be able to help others in ways that they have not as yet imagined. That's kind of what's being got at with this. I mean, I find it very beautiful, actually. It sort of evokes this tremendous kindness, a being who is more awake than you, that has a greater kindness, a greater desire for your own welfare than we currently have at the moment. What is our sort of desire for our own welfare? Is it quite limited? Is it quite unimaginative? Is it kind of vast? How far-reaching is it? Let's check how we're doing for time. Yeah, okay, so maybe one more, which is perhaps a bit more foreboding or something. At night, in darkness, thick with clouds, a lightning flash gives a moment's brightness. So sometime, by the power of the Buddha, the mind of the world might for a moment turn to acts of merit. This being so, the power of good is always weak, while the power of evil is vast and terrible. What other good could conquer that, were there not the perfect awakening mind? So I'll read that again. At night, in darkness, thick with clouds, a lightning flash gives a moment's brightness. So, sometime, by the power of the Buddha, the mind of the world might for a moment turn to acts of merit. This being so, the power of good is always weak, while the power of evil is vast and terrible. What other good could conquer that, were there not the perfect awakening mind? I don't know how that hits you, but it sounds a bit sort of to sort of grate against our modern sensibility. It sounds a bit medieval, doesn't it? This vast and terrible evil. Yeah, but I don't know if the image has come across this lightning flash giving a moment's brightness, and that being equivalent to the mind of the world turning to acts of merit. So I find that to be true. The more I practice, the more I see how in my meditation I just want to feel a bit better. You know, I just want to have a nice meditation. I don't want to grow. How in ethics, there's the sort of exchange of kind of being generous so that you kind of create a nice relationship which improves the quality of your life. It's all very understandable stuff, but the more I practice, the more I see that in subtle ways I'm kind of looking for a nice life. And actually, that's not enough, is it? It's not enough for us all to be looking for a nice life. things will go wrong if that's what's happening. We need something of a more powerful nature to move us as a race towards something beneficial for everybody. So that's the territory we're in. But the power of good is always weak, whilst the power of evil is vast and terrible. I think there's something really, really important in this. So perhaps one way of talking about it is our view of ourselves in the modern world, I think is conditioned. It sort of rests on layers of conditioning of privilege. We're incredibly fortunate in this society. We don't live in a war zone. We live in a country with democracy, in a country where there is law and order. And our experience of ourselves is based on those conditions. What would it be like were we to be on an island with our family, with the tide rising, and the peril of our children, with no hope for solutions, people starting to sort of to steal from each other, resources getting scarce? Who would we be then? Who would we be then? I think that's something that I have never had to encounter, but I do not know. I cannot know who I would be then. It's nice to think that I would be generous, but I have my doubts. I have my doubts. So in the modern world, it's a bit like there's a whole load of cotton wool between our raw impulses and the sort of way our behavior sort of manifests, which allows us to have a slightly flattering view of ourselves. I don't think we're quite like that. I don't think I'm quite like that. Actually, you see it more and more in the Buddhist. If you try and set up a Buddhist center, what happens is people fall out. And you think Buddhists shouldn't fall out. They surely should, we can fall out, but Buddhists shouldn't fall out. But that is what happens, because when we come together to work together, to live together, then you get a sense of the real drives at play, don't you? So many divorces, unfortunately, in this country. The real drives sort of start to become manifest, become apparent to us when we work together, when we live together. So I think that's what's being got at. And when you see that, you see that we need to go deeper spiritually. We need a transcendent ideal to go deeper in order to stir up deeper forces that can help us not be so determined by our knee-jerk kind of raw impulses. That's what's being got at here. So I hope you can see that in this first chapter, in various very poetic, there's something incredibly insightful. It's like reading Shakespeare. You think, oh, that's so well observed. It's such a sort of penetrating insight into human nature, from someone who was born back in 685. It's tremendous. But yeah, that gives you something of a, we might copy out a few so that people can look at them. The Bodhicharia Vatara, you might want to look at them in Tibet. We'll do that. We'll make a few copies for next week. So what do we do with this? I was going to give the example of work. What we need to do is we need to ask ourselves, how good would it be if I was to develop a regular meditation practice? What would that kind of look like? Who would I be? Who would I become? Yeah, so if we get time, actually, at the end of the evening, we'll do a bit of that. We'll do a bit of imagining our future selves. Really, really good thing to do. We don't do this enough. You know, we're sort of left with us as we know ourselves, but actually with the imagination, you can get a vivid sense that actually affects you of who you could become. I think actually probably that is a significant way that we do grow. I think the imagination is a significant part of the process of growth. So yeah, can we imagine what it would be like to be the person we have the potential to be? We have the potential to be, without all the stuff that normally weighs us down. So what I thought we could do is we could get into groups and we could talk about, we could get clear about what might be your immediate goal in the spiritual life. Yeah. What might be your immediate goal? Kind of really sort of pinning it down. Is it developing a regular meditation practice? Is it getting to know more about Buddhism? Is it meeting more Buddhists? Is it deepening your understanding of ethics? Is it developing a kind of a more rigorous ethical practice? What is it actually? It may even be a kind of worldly goal. It may be that you want to be more focused at work. Well, brilliant. As long as it's not sort of unethical, as long as it's not robbing banks or something, then well, you can do that if you want. But yeah, you could use that. What we need to do is we need to set ourselves goals, but stay aware of our experience and reflect on your experience. Reflect on when you're really enjoying it. When I'm really enjoying it at work is when I'm growing. It's when I'm growing. It's when I'm being stretched. That's what I really want from work. But I'm lazy. I sort of rely on the externals. Well, more and more what we're trying to do is identify what it is in the things that attract us. So if we stay aware and reflect on our experience and we take a goal like just being more concentrated at work, let's really sort of inquire into what is going on there. It's great that you want to do that. Let's use that. It might take you way beyond that immediate goal. Yeah. And that's where the spiritual life can lead us. That's why we need a goal like the Buddha, something that can take all of us, something that is unlimited. It will invite us beyond ourselves at every stage, at every day. Great. So let's